So starting, we're going to talk about phase 5 of our training here. A lot of times in this gym, and I'll take the ownership for this, and the coaches and some of our like seasoned athletes and members are a reflection on this, but we operate automatically assuming that everyone knows what the fuck we're talking about. And that is just not the case. Our program has grown tremendously over the last 3 years, and there's a lot of people here who haven't even been with us for one full competition cycle. So we throw things out like phase 5 and recovery versus tapering versus deloading and battery work, and we throw all these fancy terms out, and primary and secondary and what your recovery should look like. But when I look around, and especially like when I look at our Facebook page of people that are active on there, I remind myself that most of you motherfuckers have no idea what we're talking about, you know? So we've kind of got out of the habit of doing these, and we need to do them more often, especially for the people who really care about their results in training. So for those of you who are not familiar and haven't taken the time to read or listen to the content that we put out there, and I get it, we put a lot of shit out there. We previously have broken up our training year into different segments or phases, right? So what that helps us do is two things. Number one, it helps keep us on track with the direction that we're going and acknowledge the fact that our training for the year has to change and evolve based on what our collective goal is. So for example, phase 1 will look very much different than phase 5, right? Because phase 5 is leading up to a certain goal and leading up to a place where we want to be, right? So phase 5 will look a lot more consistent with what our goal is, adversely to phase 1, which looks completely different. Does that make sense to you guys? In like 10 minutes or less, what our training year looks like, all right? So I'm just going to call this early phases or off season. Now keep in mind, this is what things have looked like previously, consistent with CrossFit HQ's season, right? Which previously included the Open, the Invitational, the Liftoff, regionals, the games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right? So previously, those things had a date attached to all of them, which made our lives very, very, very easy, right? So it's very easy to say, okay, if your season is the Open, or if your season starts at regionals or the games or whatever it is, it's very easy for us to pinpoint what an off season should look like and when that should take place. Does that make sense to you guys? For 90% of everyone here and watching the video, your season was pretty much the Open, because most people, myself included, don't get past the Open, and that's just how it is, right? So based on that, we know when an off season, previously we knew when an off season should start. So for those of you guys who were here, you guys saw us doing a lot of long, slow work, a lot of long, slow sled dragging, a lot of rowing, a lot of very specific things. And what we do is we segment all of our disciplines as far away from each other as possible. So for example, during the CrossFit Open, if you're called on to have a great snatch, what good is it if you haven't developed the ability to be a great snatcher? Does that make sense? So in the off season, what we do is we segment all those things that make CrossFit away from each other as much as possible. I want to become a great rower. I want to become efficient and powerful on the bike. I want to become a great runner. I want to improve my recovery markers. I want to get strong. I want to be explosive. I want to be powerful. I want to get healthy, etc., etc. Far away from each other. Does that make sense? You guys understand when I say far away from each other? I don't need to mix double unders and snatching. I don't need to mix rowing and deadlifts. I don't need to mix my handstands with my push presses, whatever. I'm just throwing examples out there. Now, as we get closer, yes. But I want to get really good at those things as far away from each other as humanly possible. Make sense to you guys? Okay? as we get closer, we start to mix those things, and that becomes the priority. So where are we sitting right now? We're sitting in phase 5 of our training year, so we're starting to get closer to this. Now, to be honest with everybody, HQ did make all of those changes, which changes a lot for us and will more than likely change what our approach is to a season and a year a lot. We're going to do as best as we can to pick certain dates that come out and strategize and plan around that. But as of right now, not a lot has changed for us, because our whole year up to this point has always been planned around competing at Wadapalooza, Miami. So moving on, phase 5 will be, and every phase is really a continuation of the one previous. We'll build a base, and then we'll continue building on that base for the next phase, and the next phase, and the next phase. So it is more of a continuation. There's less segmentation of training. So now again, what you've seen is we're going to start mixing stuff. So right off the top of my head, I know that in phase 4, we've done a lot of rowing on Mondays in our secondary session. We are going to start skipping over those, and you're going to see more mixed stuff in your secondary sessions on Mondays. Right? So we're going to see more mixed CrossFit. So a really important thing that we need you guys to worry about is your recovery markers need to improve. Because when you do more mixed stuff and when you do more CrossFit, it hurts more. Right? And this is why we've in large part taken this philosophy in our training program, is because we don't feel like it's sustainable to do a lot of really hard CrossFit all year long. You will break. You will break. And that's why we have our program set up as such. We've been doing this for a long time, and we've seen people that take the approach of more CrossFit is better CrossFit. And for some people that works, especially for people who have very little adaptation. So like people who are young, right? If you see like some of the games athletes that come in when they're like 20 years old, and you hear them say, I've only been doing CrossFit for a year, and you're like, what the fuck? How have you gotten to that point? And you read their training log, and it's like, oh, well, you were an athlete growing up, and right when you started doing CrossFit, you linked up with a coach who was having you do 3 full CrossFit workouts a day for 2 years. So your pitch was huge. You had crazy level of improvement. And not always, but oftentimes, you crash and burn. In our program, we have session 1, session 2, right? We know a lot of people cannot do 2 full sessions with optimal recovery, okay? Well, we're going to talk about what optimal recovery should look like in a moment. But we decided about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago,
something like that.
yeah,
Not too long.
to switch from session 1, session 2 to primary and secondary. The reason is, once again, a lot of people don't have time to do both. So we want someone to look at our training program and say, I don't have time for all this shit. I'm just going to follow one of them. So it's our belief that if you just follow primary only, that's good enough to just get you fit, right? That's why we call them primary, secondary. Now, if you're an athlete, if you have competitive goals, especially if you're signed up for Wadapalooza, Miami, we do have expectations that you follow both. Does that make sense? So the reason I say that is because on Saturdays, and I know, now, some of you guys have been doing a really fucking awesome job at getting out there and doing some fitness out of the gym in preparation for Wadapalooza. But I know many of you guys do not. I know many of you guys see running on the blog and you don't do it. You only want to do the sport-specific CrossFit stuff. Trust me when I tell you, especially if you're registered for Wadapalooza, that is a bad fucking idea. Okay? If you see something like that, there's a reason why it's there, and you guys should follow it. All right? So we had this internal battle if we wanted to call our Phase 5 outdoor training primary or secondary, and the reason is because we want to make sure that you guys do it, but on Saturdays, they're of equal importance. Okay, so if you're a person that trains in the gym, and I'm saying that because we're recording, so not everyone trains in this gym, the Saturday TST sessions that you'll do, whether you run and swim first or not, will always be what's in the secondary. Okay? So if you have the schedule and you have the ability to recover and you want to go out and do the primary session early in the morning at 7 a.m. and then come in here and do the TST session at 11, that's fine. If you have to switch it and your first session of the day is the TST session at 11 and then do everything, that's fine. Whatever it is, just separate themselves, or just separate them. Make sure you have optimal recovery in between the both.
Yeah, just to clarify on the Saturday primary thing, you touched on it, but it's an outdoor session. It's a run and swim combination. It will maybe go run, swim, run, swim. It's gonna change all over the place, especially for you guys that are getting ready for Wadapalooza. We've seen it way too many times where someone qualifies or gets a spot one way or another and doesn't swim leading up to the event, and then there is a swim. There's always a swim. There's going to be a swim. And I don't want to say you're going to drown, but you might have to get pulled onto a paddleboard by a lifeguard, because that has happened to people. You don't realize how difficult it is to do 100 wall balls and then try to go swim 400 meters. It's really, really rough. So again, that is why we're putting this in the primary and calling it primary, so that you guys consider it as the priority for the day. Again, either do it early in the morning and then come here at 11, or come here at 11 for the gym session and then go later in the day, or even put it on your Sunday, whatever it happens to be.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's totally fine too. As well. So if you guys want to look at a model where if you guys want to look at a model where you're changing volume around and picking pieces to backload stuff, do that.
Yeah, that's one piece.
Absolutely do that. You can take the recovery piece that we have on Thursday, do it in the morning on Sunday, here, since you have the 24-hour access, and then go out and swim and run. That is perfect. That is a great idea. There's other markers too. I'll use Liz as an example. Liz will finish 2.5 hours of working out, and then you'll do double unders and pull-ups for another hour, and then you'll go straight into your second session of the day. And after all, you would have trained for 6 hours. Guess what? For someone like you, all that's going to do is make you move slower. And you cannot afford to move slower. You need to learn how to be explosive and move fast. And if you're always at a deficit in training, if your recovery markers are always at a deficit and you're at a caloric deficit, you're not going to get better. A big problem with doing more stuff like that, I'll get to you in a second, is you don't know what's coming up next. So, and we put a lot of thought into that, and we still miss the mark sometimes. But if you do a bunch of D-ball work yesterday, are you guys really thinking about that you have to deadlift tomorrow? Do you even know that you have to deadlift tomorrow? So if you're going to do a bunch of extra handstand push-ups because you don't feel like you've done enough of them this week today, do you know that you have to do presses tomorrow and how well that's going to translate to your handstand push-ups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Go ahead.
Talking about recovery and training, I just want to ask a question, not people who might know this right away. What does training do? Can anybody just define that in a very simple sentence? What does training do to you? It breaks you down, right? More training breaks you down further and further and further. You don't get stronger, faster. You don't improve from training. You improve, you get stronger from recovery after training. So if you're continually training with the mentality that more training is going to make you stronger, faster, better at CrossFit workouts, without taking that into consideration, your recovery and your nutrition, you're beating a dead horse. I mean, you're not doing anything beneficial for yourself. Recovery is where you become stronger, faster, and better at CrossFit workouts. So you need to consider that. And what is recovery? We talk about sleep, nutrition, stuff how much sleep should you get? 7 to 8 hours? 6 to 8? 6 is way far too.
Well, I mean, it depends.
Look, everybody's different.
It depends on your age. It depends on what you do for training. It depends on what your training goals are. If you are taking, 4 CrossFit classes a week, you're busy as fuck, and you got kids all over you, and all you can do is sleep 6 hours, take it. That's great. I know people that sleep much less. But if you're sitting here, you're watching this, and you have training goals in mind, you want to compete at Wadapalooza, if you keep on not qualifying for shit, you're wondering why, that's one thing that you should fix. Or you should realize, coño, is not a good fit for me.
Right.
Like, my lifestyle is just not consistent with being able to do these other things, which is fine as well. We can find other things collectively for you to focus on to make your training goals, right? But like, I'm not going to shit on you if you only sleep 6 hours, but somebody who's trying to qualify for major sanctioned events should be sleeping more than that. I can look around at everyone, and I'm talking Melissa, Danielle, Laura, Adri, everyone, and come up with things where you guys can improve upon in your recovery markers and how that translates to your performance now. Because maybe it prevents you from getting stronger. Maybe it prevents you from getting healthy. Maybe it's preventing you from extending your athletic career longer. Maybe it's the reason why you keep getting hurt. Maybe it's the reason why you move slow as fuck. Maybe it's the reason why you come into the gym and you always look tired. Right?
Look,
everyone here has something that they can take from that.
If you find yourself experiencing these things, these indicators, that's when you know that the balance is off. And you need to make adjustments.
There's another big one too. It's too much body fat that won't come off.
Yeah.
Or you don't have enough body fat. For females, you'll lose your menstrual cycle. Those are 2 giant recovery markers that need to be considered. I know that's like kind of tough to talk about and look at sometimes, but that is most definitely the reality. As far as like body composition goes, those are 2 like very easy things. If you have stubborn body fat that's not coming off, there's more than likely some kind of hormonal imbalance. And before you start looking at hormones and supplements and things to take and things to adjust that, we in our program always talk about like the low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit before you make decisions like that needs to be, how about I just fucking sleep another hour? Or how about I just skip a session? Or how about I follow my program for the first time in a couple months? Like, just fucking do what I'm supposed to do. You know?
D, I hear you talking about nutrition and...
Which D? Me, D. Okay.
I hear you talking about nutrition, and I'm just saying this collectively. I don't see a lot of gallons of water in the gym.
You're right.
And I know that when I won the Winter Classic and I qualified for nationals on the bodybuilding side, I was drinking about 1.5 gallons of water. It's not that difficult. Throw Crystal Light in that bitch and start drinking.
Throw Crystal Light in that bitch. You should put that shit on a shirt. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, water is included in the nutrition. Lots of water.
Part, especially for CrossFitters, especially for preparing for an outdoor event like Wadapalooza. Model, but really at the end of the day, it's about you motherfuckers, not us. So you guys have to be in charge. You guys have to be responsible for doing things. We do miss things. Right? So it ultimately is on you guys. I don't stand on that podium. I know you wear a Soul shirt, and I love that, and I appreciate that, but it's really on you guys. So you guys have to take more ownership as well. But it's about how much ownership are you going to take. There's a fine line between needing to practice my things and doing too much. A better place to put those things is probably in your warm-ups, not after you're done training and you're tired and slow. Number one, that's an area. Second thing, do some of your own research. Maybe one of your coaches is not saying the thing or giving the cue that is going to put you over the edge. We've referred some of these guys to other people, other gymnastics coaches. We've used people to help us with certain things, and we encourage you guys to do some of your own research. Sit on YouTube. Look at Buddy Lee doing, do you know who Buddy Lee is? That's your fault. Look, Buddy Lee is actually currently, it's kind of silly, but he's teaching the jump rope cert again now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's Buddy Lee is the jump rope guy. Responsibility on yourself. And then once you learn different drills and things that we're not teaching you, you know what? Say, hey Anthony, I learned this on YouTube. These 5 drills, where should I put them in my training today? That's like the perfect storm. That's, in my opinion, I think that would be like the perfect way to address those things. Okay? All right. The last thing in regards to Wodapalooza Miami. Training focused on your specific division is very important. All right? I know that our blog will program things like deficit handstand push-ups and high volume bar muscle ups and gymnastics complexes and handstand walking over obstacles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in scaled, don't do it. Okay. Don't even fucking do it. I'm not saying don't do handstand push-ups, but don't do the deficit. I'm not saying don't practice handstand walks, but don't worry about the obstacle. How many times do I come out of my office and I see a bunch of you fucking dudes walking over that? Dude, you're wasting your time. Pretend like it's not there. Okay? Just practice handstand walking. Practice handstand push-ups. Trust me, it's a waste of time. I know it's fun, and I'm not saying don't ever do it, but like just be mindful of that. Okay? Look at historically what Wodapalooza gives all of these divisions and focus on those things. And if you don't know, ask us.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yo no sé, yo nunca he ido a Wodapalooza,
So,
ni he visto nada.
ask. Ask your teammates, ask coaches, and again, do some research. Yeah, look at the WODs.
They're out.
Everything
Pero
Wodapalooza,
¿dónde están? Yo los traté de
Wodapalooza Miami workouts 2017, enter. And it all comes up. And I don't want to just hyper focus on this topic because each of you can take something from this, internalize it yourself, and have it, like, be able to relate to it better. But what are you, you right now, the way you're speaking to me, you're chasing numbers on the scale and you're chasing a certain aesthetic. The conversations we want to have is I want you to chase performance. And I want to hear about, coño, how do I start linking muscle ups together? How do I start pushing more in workouts? Because then the conversation that we can have with you is you should probably recover more. But if you're having the conversation is how can I link muscle ups together and how can I stay super ripped and lose weight, they're not the same conversation. They're not the same conversation unless you're an athlete that does need to lose body fat for adequate performance. Fat, especially for women, is good in training. It is good in training. It's going to fuel you. Mass moves mass. Fat is going to optimize your hormones in a positive way. And if you are just omitting fat from your diet and max it, I gotta train more carbs, more rice cakes, more Sour Patch Kids, more rice cakes, more Sour Patch Kids, more carbs, more Tang, more fucking Gatorade, more rice cakes, more rice cakes, more rice cakes. You're not, you know what you're doing? You're making your gut work overtime, and it's causing you more work to digest and process all of that fucking food that you're eating instead of eating some more calorically dense foods like fats. Okay. Fight and chase performance. Chase more calories on the bike. Chase a better 5K time. Chase a bigger back squat. If you want to be an athlete, don't chase weight loss.